Hi everyone, this is Logan Grab, and today I will be presenting my dissertation proposal for EDU 720 Quantitative Analysis 2. Now, to introduce what I am going to be talking about today, we all know that one-to-one technology implementation has become more and more prevalent in all of our schools, and taking a look at its efficacy regarding students' academic achievement and just overall experience with school is imperative. It's very important for us to look at that. And in addition to that, the experience that classroom teachers are having with one-to-one technology must also be considered. We need to do that so we have a big picture overall understanding of the far-reaching impact that one-to-one technology has on education. I think that sometimes we tend to look at things in isolation, and there's always a time and place for that, but we do have to pull in the student and the teacher perspective in both of these areas. And then next, by researching the one-to-one technology experiences of both the students and teachers, I really do think that I would gain a better understanding of the positive and potentially negative impact one-to-one technology has on both of those parties. And I think anybody doing a study like this would. Do I think that there are more positives than negatives? Absolutely. Do I think that there are some weaknesses that might be revealed that could be remedied? I think that's a definite possibility too. So, before going into any type of study like this, making sure that the respondents, the participants are having their confidentiality protected is very important. So I will make sure that that is done at the beginning of the study before even beginning. I think as researchers, we do have to take those things into consideration during the planning process before we actually start pursuing information from participants, because we may run into some roadblocks later on if we don't. And keeping people and their responses anonymous is always very important, especially if we want to receive, I think, more honest responses. So some of the potential research questions that I have for this study would be, how does one-to-one technology impact students' academic achievement? Then next we have, does the implementation of one-to-one technology have a positive or negative effect on student learning? And then the third potential research question is, how does one-to-one technology impact teachers' pedagogical practices? That last research question, I've really been reflecting on. I'm still in the classroom teaching, and my school just went one-to-one this past year. I had a classroom set of Chromebooks for several years, and so my students were using them on a frequent basis anyways, but there really is something very different about students having their own device all day and how that might impact how you do your planning and what your classroom looks like. So really overall, the purpose of this exploratory study is to reveal if the implementation of one-to-one technology has a positive or negative impact on students' learning and then teachers' instruction in their practices. Now, the selection of participants would be from my school primarily. So McDonald County High School is where I teach at. And like I said, we have been one-to-one for just 1 year. This is our first year. So we're definitely, I feel like we're in the implementation phase, we're in the learning phase. We still have a lot of things to learn about this process. Approximately 1,200 students attend McDonald County High School. And my goal would be for approximately 50% of those students in grades 9 through 12 to be selected as participants for the study. And then we have 78 teachers currently at McDonald County High School. And my goal there too would be to have 50 teachers selected as participants for the study. And the more I kind of got to thinking about this study, if I were to expand it, and not just look at my school, I really do think the best thing to do would be finding a school who is not one-to-one. And maybe they do have, classroom sets of Chromebooks like I used to, or have some other things going on that they have technology access, but To find a school that is not one-to-one, I think is going to become more and more challenging as the years go by. But we do, where I live, we are still a rural community, and I do think that the likelihood is greater for me to find a school that's not one-to-one in the area I do live in. So that is something that I think is a strong possibility for this study, and is a way to expand it and maybe create some more valid results, more expansive results. Now, in regard to sampling procedures, I definitely think I'd be using convenient sampling, and really I would intend to use that method for the students. Have a quote from our text here. This is done where the researcher has easy access to particular sites, such as teachers she's worked with before, pupils in her own school, and uses those people in her research. And I do think that would work well for students, and it kind of gives you who's available at the time the sampling is done. And I could use that for the teachers as well, but I think that taking the purposive sampling is a little bit more of the approach that I would want to take, because I only want teachers who are actively, in this past year, using one-to-one technology in their classroom to be eligible to participate in the study, simply because if they're a teacher that hasn't truly been using it, that may skew the results in a way that, wouldn't be very purposeful. And, I can think off the top of my head, just a handful of teachers, not at any fault of their own, but, I've taught and coached advanced weights before at our school, and that is something that I don't see myself using a Chromebook or any type of electronic device a whole lot with anyways, just because, we're up, we're moving around, we're very active. So making sure that teachers who actually use one-to-one technology for this would be very important. Now, next, we have the instrumentation. Survey questionnaires, that is something that I would do for students and teachers, and obviously they would each have their own survey, because we're looking at a little bit, different perspective with each one of those groups. Student demographic data from the McDonald County R1 School District is something that would come into play more than likely, and that's something that we could gain access to through our counselors, and obviously having permission at the forefront of this study before we even get started with it. Looking at the benchmark data our school has, we use a system called Evaluate, and that is one piece of information we'll be using. Semester grades, looking at student progress from semester to semester, and then of course with some of the tests, then we'll talk about the data analysis in a little bit using the SPSS software. Now, when it comes to the data collection, you have the creation of the survey questionnaires, and with all of the coursework in the doctoral program that I've done over the last year, I truly have to say that one of the things that I have learned the most about is the importance of creating quality questions and building, holistically good survey questionnaires. It takes a lot of thought, and it takes a lot of planning, and it's not something that you can just put together overnight necessarily and get, maybe the results you're desiring, or just not get the type of feedback that is of a high enough quality. So I think that's important. So creating that student and teacher survey questionnaire is part of that data collection, so we can collect that data. Obtaining the Evaluate benchmark scores for all students who participate in the study is important. So the principal of the school is who has access to all the Evaluate scores, so they would be able to supply me with that information. And then retrieving those semester grades for student participants. Much like that student demographic information, the counselors at our school can provide that for me. Now, whenever we delve into the data analysis, have some prospective data analysis methods I think that I would like to use that would work well. So you have a correlation analysis, and that's to evaluate the strength of the relationship between the variables. So have a couple questions tied to that. Is there a relationship between one-to-one technology and students learning? And then is there a relationship between one-to-one technology and teachers' pedagogical practices? And then looking at an ANOVA analysis, and that's really to evaluate the relationship between dependent and independent variables. So, does student learning increase or decrease as a result of one-to-one technology implementation? And are teachers' pedagogical practices positively or negatively impacted by one-to-one technology implementation? And I have a quick note here too, just to keep in mind that some of that would be dependent on me finding a neighboring school district that is not one-to-one in order to serve as a comparison to my school district as well. I do think that I could do even more with the ANOVA analysis if I'm able to find a school and teachers and students who are willing to participate in that. If we're looking just, variables, have our independent variable, we've got our one-to-one technology, and then dependent variables, student learning, academic achievement, and then teachers' pedagogical practices and experience. And then if we're looking at something being considered statistically significant for this, your p-value is going, you have your 0.05. So that is something that we've talked about a lot throughout this entire class, and I wanted to make sure that I included that because that was not something before this class that I really realized was so important, and I'm glad that I do now. So in summary, just kind of hitting on some of the high points from, the different headings throughout this presentation. The effects on students and teachers regarding one-to-one technology implementation is our big idea here. Students and teachers will be selected as participants for the study. We've got convenience and purposive sampling procedures to be employed. Student and teacher survey questionnaires will be created. Student data will be collected. Benchmark data is collected. And then, of course, semester grades, all of those used as instrumentation. Data is collected, through all of those instrumentations. And then the data is analyzed through a correlation and an ANOVA analysis. So I hope that this was pretty straightforward and gives everybody an idea of what I'd like to do. This really is something that I am considering using for my dissertation. I do have a couple of other topics, one that I've actually considered a lot more, and I won't talk about that on here just because I just am not sure about it yet, but I definitely see just technology in general it's been a big piece of education for quite some time now, and figuring out, ways for it to be the biggest blessing that it can be and not a burden, I think as educators is one of the things that we're tasked with at this point. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I'm looking forward to watching your guys's and giving you some feedback. I welcome any feedback that you have or ideas that you have to make my proposal even better. So here are my references, and thank you for taking a look at this. Have a great evening. Thanks. Bye.